Okay, hello everyone. This is Catherine Barnes, and I am here today with my friend, Dr. Hima Joshi, who is a soprano and also a professor of chemistry at Grossmont College. And she just did a really good concert, which you can see on YouTube. Is that correct?
Yes, I have it posted on my YouTube channel.
Awesome. And the purpose of this concert, other than to be an awesome concert, was to raise money for what cause?
The purpose of the concert was to raise money for the global vaccination effort, and I specifically chose Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. And so anyone who watches it online now after the fact as a recording, or anyone who was in attendance, either live, in person, or on Zoom, had the opportunity to donate.
Awesome. Very cool. So I think the first I heard about these concerts that you do, it was a few years ago, and you did one to benefit the ACLU. Had you done one before that?
Well, what I do is I make myself do a concert once a year, uh, well, pre-COVID, just to force myself to learn my music, because I always need something to be working toward. So I've been doing solo concerts, concerts with one or two other people for a long time. And usually I try to raise money. So the ACLU fundraiser was not the first concert like that I had done.
Okay, cool. No, I was just curious about that. And now when you say a long time, let's go back to the beginning. So which came first for you, music or science? Or was it like kind of at the same time?
I think it was kind of at the same time because that's the household that I grew up in. So both of my parents are in math science. My mom is a pediatrician. Well, she retired, so she's no longer working, but she was a doctor. My dad did his degrees in math and computer science, and so he worked as a database analyst in computer science. So we have a math science background in my family, and it was kind of an expectation that us kids would go into science or math. But I also had a very musical and artistic household. Both of my parents have hobbies in the arts. My mom writes poetry in Marathi, which is my family language. It's one of the Indian languages. And my dad plays an instrument called the harmonium,
Hmm.
which is a keyboard instrument that looks like a box that sits on the floor, and one pumps air into it like one would pump an accordion. And it is the instrument that accompanies Indian classical vocalists. So the same way you would see a pianist playing with someone like me, a soprano, you would see the harmonium player playing with an Indian classical vocalist. So I grew up on math and science and music. So I don't know what came first because I don't remember it entering my life. I think it was just always in my life.
That's cool. So, I mean, when you say music, that's pretty broad. How did you zero in on I want to be a singer and specifically I want to be an opera singer?
So, I heard a lot of Indian classical music around the house because my dad played for singers. So I was always hearing recordings. And we had really good music classes in my grade school when I was a kid. So I started in a grade school choir in, gosh, I don't know, maybe fourth grade or maybe even younger. And we had small classes, and the music instructor observed that I really liked to sing. And so, um, they gave me lots of encouragement. And so that, I mean, that goes way, way back. I didn't start taking voice lessons until it was recommended to me by my choir master at the end of ninth grade. But actually, a lot of singers don't start taking private voice lessons until around that age. I was
Hmm.
14. The voice is a delicate enough instrument that you don't want to work it too hard too early.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see a lot of violinists who are child prodigies, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't see a lot of singers who are quite that young, who are quite that advanced. Uh, young kids will study music in choir.
Hmm.
Uh, Maybe they'll have short individual lessons, but really you don't want to start with, long, like 1 hour lessons regularly until kids are a little bit older. So I started right around the right age. I was about 14 when I started taking voice lessons.
That's really cool. And that's actually something I've always admired about singers as an instrumentalist is there's this, it's like the one musical discipline where like you're allowed to grow and mature. Like it's not about, oh, like, how early did you start? And if you sing stuff too young, singers will talk. They'll be like, oh, she's not supposed to be singing that yet. It cracks me up.
Well, you can really hurt yourself if you push your voice too early. I mean, you can hurt yourself playing the piano or the violin too, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but it's a little bit different in that as a singer, my instrument is here,
Hmm.
and all of this is pretty delicate machinery.
Yeah.
So if you pick up bad habits, if you push it too hard at a young age, you can develop vocal injuries, and those are hard to undo.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. That's definitely true. So it sounds like so you got the right counsel. You didn't wind up with those kinds of injuries, and you were taking private lessons in high school. And then when you went to college, did you know that you were going to participate in music, or did you participate in music?
Yeah, so I've been taking voice lessons, private voice lessons, since the age of 14, and I'm very close to 50, so that's a good 35 years. Uh,
Wow.
and I've been more consistent since college, but even in college, I was taking lessons probably once or twice a month.
Hmm.
So essentially, ever since I started taking voice lessons, I've tried to find a teacher wherever I have moved.
Hmm.
So in undergrad, I was taught by graduate students in music. And I went to the same undergrad that you went to, Northwestern, go Cats. So that they have a very good music school and they have a really good choral program.
They
So
do.
they encouraged everybody who wanted to sing. And you went and you did one audition, and then they placed you in the appropriate choir. And they guaranteed that you would be placed in a choir. And so I did that. I sang in choirs all through undergrad. When I came here to San Diego to UCSD for graduate school, I made sure that I found a voice teacher and a choir. So I've just been keeping it up. It's like you have to find the gym, you have to find your local grocery store, you have to find your voice teacher and your choir. That's just kind of what I do when I move into a place.
Wow, I love it. I love that consistency, and I love that it's like that it's on the same level for you as the gym. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So I always wondered because I know you went to Northwestern. Did the music program at Northwestern have any influence on your decision to go there, or were you purely going there for the academic reputation?
I don't remember. I'm sure that when I was talking to my guidance counselor about options, of course, the academics came first because I knew that I wanted to major in a science. But I may have known at the time that they had a good music school. I don't remember. It was such a long time ago. I'm
Yeah.
old.
No, it's well, and I think that process, that college selection process, at least it can be kind of painful. And so if you blocked it out, I completely understand that. Like that makes total sense. Um, so at Northwestern, I remember you told me that you originally you were thinking pre-med, but then something changed your mind. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so I was a good little Indian girl. I mean, I'm still good. I'm still a good girl. Um, and so the expectation was that I go into medicine. And so, of course, I was taking biology and organic chemistry and all those classes. And I really fell in love with organic chemistry. I was just wowed by it. It kicked my butt initially. I mean, I didn't do well. A lot of people assume that because I chose to study organic chemistry and pursue an advanced degree in it. A lot of people assume that it came easily for me, but it was just the opposite, and I think that's what attracted me to it.
Hmm.
I like a challenge, and I didn't think that I had to be naturally good at something. I felt like if I worked hard enough, I could get good at it, and I enjoyed studying it. So I decided, I really would like to study more chemistry, and I realized that I don't like sick people in hospitals, and I had just been talking about going to medical school because it was this expectation, and I didn't want to let anybody down, namely, my parents and the Indian community. Uh, but I was able to say, well, hey, I want to go to graduate school, which is still, a worthy pursuit. So that's how I kind of changed directions.
Huh. So I like what you said about you got fascinated with organic chemistry because it was a challenge for you. Do you ever experience that same challenge with your singing?
Oh yeah, yeah, because I am not the best sight reader. And a lot of us singers, especially sopranos, are guilty of not being the best sight readers. And what I mean by that, for any non-musical folks in the audience, is I'm not particularly good at picking up a piece of music, giving myself an opening pitch, and then just singing it off the page without plunking
Mm-hmm.
notes along.
Mm-hmm.
I rhythmically I'm pretty good, but in terms of notes and intervals, I'm not as good as some people are.
Mm-hmm.
So what I lack in sight reading ability, I make up for in effort. So I
Mm.
put a lot of time and energy into learning the music, whereas I think some people just kind of read it right off and
Mm.
don't really have to put a lot of time and energy into it. And sight reading for singing is different than playing an instrument because there are no buttons or strings that I press down with my fingers to achieve the notes. You have to know what the pitch sounds like in your mind before you sing it. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
a different kind of thing. I've gotten a lot better. And also, singing is not my profession. So I don't put the same kind of time into it that a professional would, which
Mm-hmm.
means it takes me a lot longer to learn a piece. So a professional might learn a particular piece in a matter of weeks, but it might take me months or a year, which
Mm-hmm.
is fine because I like doing that. I like
Mm-hmm.
studying. I never feel like, oh, when am I going to learn this already? Unless I've planned poorly and I know I have a performance coming up. But usually
Hmm.
that doesn't happen. Usually I take into account that it's going to take me a while.
Hmm. Okay. So, you talked about not being able to put in the same kind of time that a professional would put in. So, I guess one of the things I wonder about is like, how have you sort of balanced the singing with, all of the demands on you as an organic chemist and as a professor?
Uh, there have been times when it has been hard. So in undergrad, when I was living in the dorms and, it was cold and flu season and we all got colds and flus, there were times when I had to cancel my lesson because I just wasn't feeling well enough. That's the problem with being a singer is, a little bit of crud here and it really can affect you. So that balance was difficult, and of course, I had to focus on my major, and no classes in my major came easily to me. Chemistry did not come easily to me, so I had to put a lot of time and energy into it. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a time when I feel like I was keeping the music going, but it wasn't the balance that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But in graduate school, chemistry graduate school is about being in lab. I mean, essentially,
Mm.
the first year you have long hours in lab. And so it feels more like a job than it does school.
Huh.
So I had time to go to choir on Monday evenings. I was in La Jolla Symphony Chorus, I still am. Uh, so that is to say, as long as I was accomplishing what I needed to in the laboratory, no one was asking me what I was doing in the evenings or on the weekends or that sort of thing. And we would come in and out of lab too in the evenings and on weekends. It was about keeping our projects going.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in grad school, I was better able to do that. And I also, um, I had to strike that balance out of necessity
Hmm.
because music is what has kept me sane. So often it's not like, oh my gosh, how am I going to find time to do this music? It's, oh my gosh, I need to do some music or I'm going to go bonkers.
Mm.
It's very much like going to the gym. It's very much like exercise for me. So I use music and exercise in a way that helps me mitigate anxiety.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so kind of to follow up on that, I was gonna ask about how your musical training had influenced your career as a chemist and a professor, or has it? Do you think it has?
Yeah, I mean, you can't unlearn anything.
Right.
So, sometimes people will say, "Oh, well, do you use your degree? You have a PhD. Do you really use that PhD when you teach?" Well, how can I not use it? Well, the things that I learned are in my brain and I use my brain. So all of our life experiences get used when we're
Hmm.
doing whatever it is that we're doing, right? You can't not use something that you know. So absolutely. But I do help my students understand that learning chemistry requires the same kind of practice that learning an instrument or learning to play a sport does.
Mm.
And I use that analogy all the time because somehow I think some students feel like, oh, I have to already be good at chemistry to learn chemistry. And so they come into
Hmm.
my classes saying, well, I'm not good at chemistry. I'm like, well, you're not good at chemistry yet. How much have you
Hmm.
practiced? You know, can you
Hmm.
just pick up the violin and play it? Can you just like go out there and play football if no one's ever taught you and you haven't practiced? No. So why would chemistry be any different? And so I know what it takes for me to keep my instrument healthy and to learn a piece of music. And really, learning chemistry or anything is not that different, right? It's
Hmm.
it's about repetition, it's about reflection, it's about feedback from external sources and incorporating that feedback. It's really the same thing.
Wow. Okay, so I wish there were a way to take what you just said. I guess there is. It's called the internet. But anyway, just to take what you just said and just have all the people who make policy decisions about arts education in the schools like hear that.
Yeah,
Because it's, I mean, I can say it till I'm blue in the face, but people are like, "Oh, well, you're a music teacher and you want to have a job, so of course you would say that." But
sure. Yeah.
like when a chemistry professor says it,
Well, and I don't like these hierarchies that we have. Oh, well, this subject matter is important and this is not. Well, says who? And
mm,
if we all went into chemistry, it would be a rather boring and useless world. And if we all went into music, it would be a rather boring and useless world. And people are not unidimensional. You know,
right.
there are plenty of people who love math and who also love music and who love science and also play football. And I don't think that we need to put people in these boxes. That's really not necessary.
Well, and I think what you just said about unidimensional is interesting because as a percussionist, there was a lot of pressure on me in undergrad and honestly like for throughout my whole career to specialize in something, to pick one thing and really get good at it and really say, okay, I'm a marimbist, I'm a vibraphonist, whatever, like hone in on that. And that I've never been able to do that, right? And I always wonder, I mean, not to go with the current in vogue, which is to blame everything on capitalism, but that was what I wondered, like, is this a capitalism thing that we expect people to be so specialized? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe there's this notion, and maybe this isn't wrong, that we can only focus on so many things at once.
Yeah.
So maybe in a particular month or year, you have to pick your focus, right?
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that your focus won't change.
Mhm.
Ultimately, you are a musician. And so I think it's more about deciding for yourself what the role of music is going to be in your life. So for
Mhm.
for a career musician, for someone who says, all right, I'm going to pay my grocery bills doing music. That person has to make some practical decisions, right? Like,
Right.
okay, where's the money? Where are my interests? Where do those two things overlap the best? That's what I'm going to focus on,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I did that with my career. I'm just not a career musician, I'm a career chemist. So I had to figure out, okay, what aspects of chemistry do I like? What do I enjoy doing? What have I gotten good at? And of those things, what's going to make me some money so I can pay my bills? And
Mm-hmm.
thankfully, we have this enterprise of teaching and education. And so that's where I found my spot. So, in some ways, I had to ask myself that, right? Because when I finished my degree, I had to think about, okay, do I want to go do research in industry? Do I want to teach? Those are two very different things. It's possible to go from one to the other. I've known some people who have done research in industry and then, the biotech boom became the biotech bust and they switched careers. And it's not easy to do, but it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't known too many people who've gone the other way. So once you've taught for a while and you're away from the research world, it's kind of hard to go into research. So there were decisions like that to be made, I think, for all of us, right? Whatever we
Mm-hmm.
decided to make a career out of. So I think when we're encouraged to focus, I think it's somebody who cares about us saying, hey, if you're going to pay the bills doing this, then pick one thing that you're going to get really good at so you can outcompete these other people and forage your way through and make a career.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, definitely. But, while you were talking, I guess I was thinking about the fact that when I took your summer organic chemistry class that you do, the chemistry orchard, right? Your side hustle, which I think is very cool. And seeing your whiteboard and your Rosalind Franklin poster, it's totally bringing me back.
Right?
Yes. But I mean, I took your class and I got inspired to find ways to play those molecules on the Pandero. And it's like, I guess I remember I had a hard time deciding, okay, am I going to take Hima's class? Because I'm like, well, that's time you could be practicing. That's time you could be writing a new show. That's time you could be doing all these things. But for some reason, I just really wanted to take your class. And I took it not knowing that it would give me this inspiration, and then it did. So it's so hard to know, okay, like when do I focus like they're telling me to, and when do I go off on this weird tangent? And it turns out that actually, as Rosalind Franklin says, science and everyday life cannot and should not be separated. It's actually a thing that's going to help my everyday life. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, because again, you can't not be you. If you're a creative person, you're going to be a creative person no matter what you're doing. You're going to be a creative person while you're washing the dishes, while you're studying chemistry, while you're doing music, while you're taking out the trash, right? So you're going to approach whatever it is that you do from a creative perspective. So of course, your creativity is going to be fueled by taking a chemistry class because you're just a creative person. And the same goes for me. A lot of people think that the people in the arts are creative and then they're the people in science. And it's like, well, no, where does innovation come from, right? It comes from
Right.
creativity. So I'm creative too. And yeah, I'm going to approach anything from that creative perspective. I think of a poet, right? Someone who has a tendency to write verse. That person's not going to stop being a poet because they're sitting in a chemistry course. Probably something's going to come to them about chemistry that they want to turn into a poem. Um, and I think that's true for everyone. So I do think that we get to that point in our careers where we don't have to focus. Uh, in that traditional sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that these other things that we're doing, these distractions, they're actually going to feed into our core discipline and our core sense of self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. These distractions are going to feed into our core discipline and our core sense of self. I just need to stop and let that sit for a minute because that's really cool. While you were talking, I was remembering in your class, the very last thing we did was we had to take, you gave us the assignment to take like something we had learned in your class, and then we had to find like some creative way to present it to the class. So we had like people writing haiku, we had people drawing cartoons, we had people making slideshows, and I did my Pandero thing. Is that a thing that you do also in your classes at Grossmont?
Yeah, so I when I teach my organic chemistry class at Grossmont, on the last day of class, the students do present haikus that they've written on specific organic chemistry topics. And I tell them they can't just be about, oh, I love organic chemistry. It has to be something really specific. It has to be a topic that we studied. And the idea is if they're being creative, it kind of unlocks their mind and helps
Mm,
them learn the topic better. So I encourage people to pick a topic that's difficult for them. So
mm,
if it's, um, something about acids and bases, if they just had difficulty with it, well, then they have to really study their notes and think about, okay, how am I going to capture the essence of this? Because it has to be the essence because it's a haiku, right? It's really short. So it takes a lot of thought to write something short. So hopefully, as they are thinking through, okay, how am I going to make this haiku make sense? They're unlocking some part of their brain that's going to help them learn it better. So I do use that. And I do it because I'm kind of subversively trying to make this point constantly to people that science and creativity are not two different things.
mhm.
And organic chemistry, especially, has such a bad reputation for just being this like horrendous slog that I don't know why. It's such a beautiful discipline. And so I'm trying to trick my students into having fun with it. And I'm trying to trick them into silencing that voice that keeps telling them organic chemistry is hard, it's impossible, and I'm going to die and I hate it. Because people come into organic chemistry with these preconceived notions.
Mhm.
So as organic chemistry professors, as chemistry professors, that's our job actually, is to first get the students to silence that inner voice that's already telling them before we even show them what the discipline is, oh yeah, you can't do this, it's impossible and you're going to hate it, right? I don't feel like that happens so much with the visual arts and with music. I don't know, you teach music, do you find that I'm asking you questions, I guess you're supposed to ask me, but
No, it's okay.
do you find that students come in thinking, okay, music class is going to be impossible and I'm going to hate it?
Wow. Okay. So the subject that immediately came to my mind when you mentioned that was teaching students to read Western notation. I found that students are particularly resistant to that, and especially in these years after the pandemic. Like my last year at our former place of employment, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I didn't even bother. I was just like, I know there's no way. These kids are so fried. There is no way I can get them to put the brain power in that they're going to need to do to learn to read. And I think it's probably, like with organic chemistry, there's that stereotype of, oh my God, it's impossible. Oh my God, it's so hard. I think also there's a little bit of like I don't know, almost like a colonialist mindset with the reading of the notes. It's like, oh, well, this is like real. And if you're a real musician, you know how to do this. And if you don't know how to do this, well, then, you're not a real musician. And I think that sometimes gives the students kind of a mindset of like, well, then I don't want to do it. They want to rebel against it. So I think there are some things like that. I think the difference between what you teach and what I teach is that for me, there's the expectation that it will be fun. And guess what? There's times when it's not fun. I mean, have you experienced anything as a singer that was not fun?
I mean, there are times when I'm like, oh, dang it, why can't I get this? Or I learn, what's the worst is when you learn it wrong and
Oh
then you
yeah.
have to
Oh God.
fix it,
Yeah.
right? And if it's rhythmic, especially if it's rhythmic, because by then your
Mhm.
body's doing it wrong, you're like, oh
Yep.
crap, that was a
Yep.
triplet, right? So I think, yeah, and I think, hard work and fun are not two different things. So there's somehow this misconception that if you're working hard, it's not fun. Well, why? Like, why? I don't understand that. If you're working hard at something, but it's interesting, then it's fun, right? So I don't understand where that comes from, but I think that's what you're talking about. I think a lot of students feel like, okay, when I walk into a music class, I'm not going to work hard because I'm having fun.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yep, exactly. Exactly. And so sometimes I feel envious of teachers who, well, sometimes, a lot of the time, I feel envious of teachers who teach things like science and math because they just get to be like, here it is. I don't care if you like it or not. If you want to do this, like if you want to get an A on the test, this is what you have to do. Right. And with me, I have to be Mary Poppins and I have to go, oh, a spoonful of sugar. And it's like, no, dude, like if you don't learn this, you're not going to be able to play.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and then the other side of that, of course, is sometimes I have to stop in the middle of class and say, hey, isn't this cool? Because I have to say, stop thinking about, is this going to be on the test? And oh my God, like, wait a minute. This thing that we just talked about, it's so cool. And it just is, regardless of whether it's on the exam or not, this thing is cool. Can we just stop and appreciate that for a second? Right. And I think that's my challenge. But going back to the music reading thing, I appreciate, I mean, this probably doesn't surprise you because I'm a scientist. I appreciate that we have a whole system of musical notes and rhythms because I know that if you hand me a piece of music with enough time and energy, I can figure out how it goes. I can stand in front of the piano and I can count the beats and I can play the notes and I can figure it out. And there's no mystery. And I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's an operating system, it's a programming language. It makes everything much quicker. And actually, that kind of leads me into, so you did this really cool thing on your last concert where you did some songs with your husband, Jeremy Kopp, who is a bassist. And you mentioned that he doesn't read and you do read. So what happens when the worlds colliding?
Yeah. So he can read. I mean, that
Oh,
is
he
just,
can. Okay.
you can sit him down with the score and he'll be able to say, okay, that's in 4/4 and this is a quarter
Mm-hmm.
note and these are eighth notes. But he doesn't learn that way because he's a rock musician. So he
Mm-hmm.
learns mainly by ear. He counts really well, especially in odd meter.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can tell him, hey, this is in 7/8, and he'll be like, okay, cool, I hear that.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a piece of music that we're working on, um, we have to figure out a way to communicate because when I'm working on a piece of music with another classical musician who reads music, we just both have the piece of music and,
Right.
and we can see the key signature, we can see whether it's in 3/2 or 4/4 or whatever it is, and we just both know that we both know that because we're both looking at it. So it was interesting working with Jeremy because I was kind of singing to him and he was picking it up and coming up with ideas. And so there were moments when we were totally off kilter because I made an assumption that he saw in the music what I saw in the music.
Mm-hmm.
For example, it was in 3/2. And I was like, what? Like, why are you doing that? He's like, well, okay, I'm counting to 4. I'm like, we didn't discuss this. So, but I think that it was helpful to me because the fun of arranging something for soprano and bass guitar is to come off the page a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
our own flair. And so we had to pick those moments where we decided, okay, we're starting this phrase together, but this time the bass actually has been assigned the way we arranged one of our pieces. The second verse, I gave the bass the melody. So I
Mm.
said, okay, you're in charge. We have to be together at the start of the phrase because I'm singing a harmony to you. So we have to start at the same time. But now you're in charge. So you push and pull me, but you have to let me know. You have to communicate with me what you're doing so I can push and pull
Mm-hmm.
with you. Um, so that's the fun actually of not being married to the music on the page, and just being married to, well, literally married to the but married to the concept that okay, we're gonna do something different. We're gonna feel it out together, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and that was the first time that you guys had performed together, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. So because so this concert was all about how did we reinvent ourselves during the pandemic, and the title of the concert was The Mother of Invention, Novel Strains. So as we know, necessity is the mother of invention, and we were in lockdown, so he couldn't go to band and I couldn't go to choir, and it was not fun. So we decided, okay, I'm a musician, you're a musician, let's just do something. And if it's terrible, it's terrible, because really, who's listening? It's just us, right? So that actually, I think, was if there is an upside of the pandemic. I think a lot of us came away from that lockdown experience with a bit of a devil may care attitude. Like, we thought a lot less in terms of, oh, I probably shouldn't start this piece of music because what if I can't do it? And we thought more in terms of, well, what the heck? I mean, I've got nothing to lose. There's nothing else going on. I'm just going to try it. So yeah, that was the first time that we had collaborated in a performance.
Wow. And I will tell you, I mean, what do I know? I'm a drummer, okay, but of the pieces that you performed, and I mean, I enjoyed the whole concert, but I really, really enjoyed the stuff that you did with Jeremy. So I hope you guys keep doing it.
Yeah, well, now that we know we can, because that's the thing, we hadn't tried. And I think it's a different outlet for both of us, because he does different things with his bandmates than he does with me, and I do different things with him than I would in my choirs or even my solo performances. Super
Well,
fun.
I mean, I'm glad you're doing it. Let me ask this, because there was a lot of different repertoire on the concert. And by the way, a friend of mine who's getting her doctorate in voice pedagogy at Indiana University saw your program, which I shared on Instagram as my Instagram story, and she saw the two songs that you did in the second half of the program. The composer's first name starts with R.
Rosephine Powell.
Say it one more time.
Rosephine Powell.
Yeah, she sent me a message and said, "Oh, those are good songs." So I thought you might like to hear that. How did you choose your repertoire for this show?
Yeah, so some of it was, again, necessity. So the start of the show was about solitude, right? So the first two pieces I sang by myself. And for people in your audience who don't know, I mean, singers typically don't just sing by themselves. Singers typically have a piano accompaniment. And so I wasn't able to meet with my pianist, and I had to come up with something to do. So I had been working on these folk songs, and I thought, okay, well, let me just sing them a cappella. And so that kind of notion of, okay, what can I sing on my own, right? That's what motivated the first part of the concert. And then I asked my friend who plays handbells, I said, can you think of something that I can play? Because, I can't play. I can plunk on the piano, but nobody wants to hear me do that. And I definitely can't do it while I'm singing. So is there something that I can play that feels like support, that feels like accompaniment? So it's not just my naked voice. And so she told me about hand chime, which I don't have here, but it's in the other room. But you strike it like a bell, and it really resonates. So that whole thing was, all of that was just necessity. Like, okay, I don't want to just sing on my own. What can I play? But I don't have a pianist. So that's how I chose that repertoire. But it's interesting because I was doing Skype lessons with my voice teacher, and she said that my voice improved because I was playing the hand chime, because I was trying to imitate that really resonant sound of the hand chime. And so I was making small adjustments in the way that I was singing. And she said that I was singing in a much more resonant fashion.
And I wonder if it also helped you, because you were talking about the intervals and the sight singing and all that. Like, do you think it also helped you with that kind of thing?
A little bit, because I had to say to myself, okay, this hand chime is A440. So what note am I starting on? I'm going to find that note. I mean, it wasn't crazy hard, but yes, like I didn't start either of any of those initial pieces on A.
Mm-hmm.
I started on pitches that related to
Mm-hmm.
A, right? So I started on the minor third or something like that. So I had to find those. And then the next piece that I sang was for unaccompanied soprano, which again, that is noteworthy because usually singers are not unaccompanied. You might see a choir that's unaccompanied, but that's several people singing different parts. And so they create the chords and they have each other for support and for reference. So I found the piece by Juliana Hall, which was the E. E. Cummings poem, "Oh Sweet Spontaneous," and it was just soprano. So then I had to train myself to give myself an opening pitch, which was an A, and then find my way through the piece, just referencing the pitches that were in my head. So that was really hard to learn because I didn't have anybody playing anything. I couldn't look at a piano part and say, oh yeah, she's playing that pitch there, and then I'm going to be able to get my pitch here. And it wasn't as simple as Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Like it was not it was not a conventional sounding melody. So that a lot of that was reading intervals and trying to memorize them, and then kind of backing off and seeing if I could sing those intervals and just make them feel normal, like see if they came to my head. So there was a lot of going to the piano, plunking it out, and then singing it for myself, and then checking until the pitches just kind of came. And I wasn't sure if I could do that because it was 4 pages of just my finding my way. And I don't have perfect pitch. So people who have perfect pitch, they have all the pitches in their head, and you can just say, hey, sing me an F sharp, and they can just find it. But I don't have that. So I had to find all of the pitches relative to the others. And usually I was really close, or I was dead on. Or if I was slightly off here, I kind of made up for it in the next spot. And so I ended up in the right place.
Well, and you've just outlined that process you talked about earlier, where here was this thing that was hard, and like you liked that challenge, you rose to the challenge, you practiced, and you did it. I mean, I heard it, it was great.
Yeah, I did it. And I was surprised that I was able to do it. And I was really glad that I found the piece, actually. And I did it for this concert, but I also did it for La Jolla Symphony Chorus. Had we called it a virtual potluck. So it was a virtual concert, meaning the whole bunch of stuff was recorded ahead of time and then kind of launched. And the potluck aspect was they asked anyone in the La Jolla Symphony or in the chorus to submit an idea for something they wanted to play or sing. And so I submitted that piece because I had been working on it. And they said, okay, yeah, let's do it. And I got to go to a church and record it with a sound engineer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun. Yeah, it was right after we had all gotten vaccinated before the variants started coming. So we felt comfortable going into the church and recording. And I was the only one on stage. The sound engineer was recessed a little bit and he was recording me, and I had one other person there. So it wasn't even a group. But so at the end of all of that, the music director, Steve Schick, said, hey, you should send the recording to the composer. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's kind of scary. I shouldn't do it. Should I really do it? Okay, I'll do it. So I went to Juliana Hall's website and I found her contact information. I said, hi, my name's Hima, and I sang your song. If you would like to hear it, here's the YouTube link. And she wrote me back the next day and she said, thank you for making it your own and for learning it so thoroughly. I guess I didn't have as many wrong notes as maybe some people have had in the past, but that was exciting. So yeah.
Oh, that's very, and let's like back up the truck for a second, because like I'm a percussionist, so I know who Steve Schick is very well. And so Steve Schick tells you, hey, you should send your recording to the composer. That's a pretty big deal. Like,
I
that's pretty cool.
I was I was pretty psyched that he said that.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's not easy to please. He's a cool guy. I think he's a really cool guy. But I mean, that's big. Like, I mean, and you're a chemist as well. So like, I don't know. Please put that feather in your cap. That's really cool.
It helps to be a chemist though, because there's no pressure on me to
Mm,
sing well. Okay.
mhm.
The bar is lower for me as a singer because I'm a chemist, right?
Mm.
That's super helpful because at any point I can be like, oh, well, I messed up that note. I sang that note wrong, or I sang that piece poorly. But whatever, I'm just a chemist. I'm not expected to sing well. That takes the pressure off, right? So that can actually be really helpful.
That sounds like my experience when I took your summer organic chemistry class, which by the way, I felt so awkward because it was like a bunch of 18-year-olds and
Right.
me. And like, and also since I was like your friend and I knew you, I felt like embarrassed that I was so willing to like ask questions and say all these things. And like, they weren't probably because like, well, they didn't want to look like they didn't know it. And they're probably the crowd where either they themselves or their parents are like, go to med school, be a doctor.
Right,
I'm
right.
just like, ooh, this is fun. Ooh, I like this.
It was great because it was a class that was designed for students who are majoring in science, who are planning to take organic chemistry, and it was to help them get ready. And it was through my little side business, the Chemistry Orchard. But you had a different role in the class. The class actually was not designed for you. You were a guest, right? You were like, hey, I wonder what organic chemistry is about. Can I come sit in? So you were my colleague sitting in on the course, and everybody knew you hadn't had the prerequisites, right? So when you said, hey, I don't quite get this. Is that something I would have learned in general chem, the prerequisite? And I could just say, well, yeah. Whereas for them, it's like, well, you guys took general chem, you should remember this, right? So yeah, that's the same sort of thing. You had
Yeah.
this sort of devil may care attitude. Like if I do anything half decent in this class, people are going to be like, oh wow, look at her go. So that I think that's very liberating
Yeah.
because you learn more then,
No,
right?
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, that's a very good point. So I mean I feel a little like kind of like it's a dirty trick to ask this question because you just finished such a great concert and like it was also well prepared and everything flowed and when's the next one gonna be?
I don't know. So, I mean, this is the first um, post-pandemic, we're in the pandemic, but concert, right? The last one was the one that you and I did with Anna right before the pandemic hit. That was February 2020, right? Right around
Yep.
Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
So pre-pandemic, I was forcing myself to do a concert once a year,
Mm-hmm.
aside from my choral concerts. So I'm in La Jolla Symphony Chorus. We have a few concerts a year. I'm in Sorella San Diego, which is a women's chorus. Um, and we have two concerts a year, but in terms of solo repertoire, I usually force myself to do one a year. So who knows, maybe next summer will be a good time and we can do it again. I mean, this concert, I was so lucky because Sally and Bill Dean hosted us. And so it was a house concert. And the real coup was the patio seating.
Oh yeah.
And apparently the sound was really good out on the patio, mainly because I was inside with hardwood and
Yeah.
hardwood was great. And so the sound really resonated to the outside. And their setup was so nice that even you were inside, right?
I
But
was. Yep.
that was super well ventilated. And of course, we did all the COVID safety protocol. That's a nice thing about a house concert is I can invite a small group of people who I know are going to comply with all the safety rules. So it was nice to do it and say, okay, at least we can do this. And in some ways, this whole house concert concept is like more fun than renting out a big venue and trying to fill it. Because usually, like, if we rent out a big venue, we put so much energy into trying to get the butts in the seats.
Right. Yes.
None of that this time. I sent the invitation out. People wanted to come. They let me know. If I didn't hear from them, I wasn't like, oh, we have to get the butts in the seats. There was none of that. The pressure to make people attend was completely off. And we had like 30 people there.
You had great attendance. Yeah. And you were also live streaming it. Let's not forget.
That was a challenge. But that's something that we learned during the pandemic. And, I have my parents on the East Coast, and other people in our group of performers had people far away who couldn't come. So we tried it. It turned out all right. I mean, it looks, it's on YouTube, and it's definitely a home recording. It's not a pro recording. But I don't think that was the point, really, and you can't, I don't know, maybe you've done this, but I feel like whenever you do a performance, you can't get the pro recording done in the same take that you're doing the concert for the people. It's too challenging.
There's something to be said for live recording, but I don't think that because like you were running that computer and you were also performing. I don't think you can do that. I think probably, there needed to be someone else who was handling that. But I think there's something to be said for live recording.
Yeah. And I had thought about that. I had reached out to some people who maybe could have done a much more professional job than what I did on Zoom, but it didn't work out, in terms of availability and stuff. And I thought, you know what? Let's just do it on Zoom. We'll do the best we can. At least my parents and some of my friends who are out of town can watch and participate. And I thought it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was great. I'm really looking forward to the next one. So how can people find you if they want to know what you're doing musically or chemistryly? How can they find you?
Well, as you see, I have these different facets of my life. So my I have a YouTube channel that's just under my name, Hima Joshi. And that's where this recent performance is posted. And anyone who would like to take my next summer's organic chemistry prep course through the Chemistry Orchard can just go to the Chemistry Orchard website, chemistryorchard.com. Or, I teach at Grossmont, so you can find me at Grossmont. You can find me on Facebook. Depends on what you want to do.
We have options. Awesome. Okay, I'll make sure that definitely that folks have the link to your YouTube channel with the concert on there. Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
Totally. So keep us posted on your next performance, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay.